Okay. Time for what I am sure is going to be the most painful Jubilee experience we've had.
Like, throughout all of history, and...
Middle Ground is a social experiment that brings humans with opposing beliefs together. These discussions may contain viewpoints that are the result of misinformation. Remember to seek out experts and to be critical of your own biases while forming an opinion. Please see the humanity in each participant, and as always, we encourage empathy.
Sorry, just real quick. What a fucking cucked position. You're like, hey, on the one hand, we have a bunch of bigots. On the other hand, we have the objects of their bigotry. Please be understanding of their differences. Nah, motherfucker, I'm gonna be understanding of exactly one side of that group's differences, okay? It's gonna be the object of the bigotry. I like that. They are objectively the people you should be siding with. Like, holy shit. Will they have conservative feminists again? Just you watch.
Just redefining what being a man is. You have to understand you're redefining a fabric in society that has kept the human race and got it to where it is today.
But do you see the state
We got a literal neo-Nazi here.
of our world today? It's not perfect, and it's been led by men, like, throughout all of history, and look where it's gone.
Oh, fuck, man. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. The trans men on this panel are braver than any troop.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Masculinity is disappearing in America.
Oh, man.
I think that masculinity is disappearing. I think that it's a concerted effort to emasculate men. I think that some people feel threatened by...
Wait, isn't Brandon... Wait, I think Brandon is a... he's that's the guy. Yeah, no, but what's he from? I can't place him. I think we maybe he was on Candace Owens. Yeah, who is this guy? Is this Officer Tatum? Wait. Officer Tatum. Yeah, no, this is fucking Brandon Tatum. They're like fucking going out and they're grabbing these aren't like normal fucking people. They're going out and they're grabbing like political commentators to put together like these panels. What the fuck? Like, again, the presentation of this is as like, here's a bunch of normal people who just disagree. No, you can't present it like that when you're going out and deliberately picking political operatives. Fucking hell.
Masculinity and the typical way that men carry themselves.
Cause you know, they got like normal ass trans men off the street, you know, like as far as I know, none of these people are like political activists that I know of in the online sphere. Meanwhile, they get like media trained conservative ops on the other side. Fuck Jubilee.
Leading families and different things like that. So I think that there's an effort to mitigate strong men in America.
There's a few different ways to think about masculinity, but just looking at kind of the definition of the term 50 years ago, you had people like John Wayne, you had Martin Luther King, you had Sean Connery. You think of like masculine features as in beards, hairy chest, big muscles, think stoic, being brave, being rugged, being a provider. Today you have people like Harry Styles and Timothy Chalamet. You have people that are completely contrary to what we were looking at back then and those values of those masculine.
All that means is that we might be looking at different people now than we were looking at 50 years ago. And sorry, bucko, that's just how time works. Yeah, exactly. Professional propagandists versus Maddie out of sophomore college gender studies class. Yeah.
Masculine characteristics are completely devalued.
I do believe that masculinity is going downhill, especially if you look at like
Yeah, motherfucker. Just look in the mirror.
testosterone levels. Now the testosterone level.
Dude. First of all, this is not the guy to be talking about testosterone levels. This is not the guy to be talking about testosterone levels. Like, if you're gonna get a guy to talk about testosterone, this is the guy you should get to talk about that. Not this guy. But two, you don't want to talk about testosterone levels around trans men, because I guarantee you, trans men have a much better idea of what their testosterone levels are than cisgender men.
Is going downhill, especially if you look at like the testosterone levels. Now the testosterone levels for guys is going down compared to generations before us. So yeah, I agree. Hi, I'm Gilbert. I'm 24 years old and I'm a conservative man.
Yeah, see,
with my
Ashley,
beliefs and
I
having
understand.
a trans man as my friend, we don't really talk about politics. With my beliefs and having a trans man as my friend.
Oh, the look, he's even smiling. He knows he's pulling the I have a black friend defense, but for trans men. Yeah, we don't really talk about politics, because if we did, I'd have to tell my my trans man friend that I think he's actually a woman.
We don't really talk about politics.
Yeah, try telling that to your friends. See how long they stay friends with you.
Someone being trans doesn't make me like them any less of a person. As far as pronouns, when referring to my friend, I don't really use the pronouns that my friend would want. I just say,
you're a dog shit friend then, and I guarantee you that if they ever see this video, they're not going to be your friend anymore.
say my friend or I say their name, just because I feel like I'm giving into the narrative that men can be women and women can be men if I use the pronouns that they want.
You already called them a trans man! So you know that they're a man! God. Fuck this clown.
I do see that masculinity is under attack completely, but my definition of masculinity, like you said, has a lot to do with the traits that are associated with it. As a gay man,
I want them to tell these motherfuckers that they aren't men. God, this guy got a goddamn like full-on beard. He's got more facial hair on his one face than every cisgender man on the panel combined.
of all of us, you know, I mean, I'm not the most masculine man, but I do think that the good aspects of
Yeah, you look like you look like a smooth motherfucker. Like just smooth all over, unnaturally. Like you got sandpapered down.
masculinity are definitely under attack, but I don't think that it's disappearing. It's just being channeled in different ways.
It depends on how you look at it, because a lot of the traits can also be embodied in women and femininity. So when we look at masculinity, I think that we have to also look at what is the actual definition of femininity and masculinity, and if we're defining masculinity
This motherfucker even has like a deeper voice than anyone else on the panel.
by being stoic or muscles,
Is that
or
Buck Angel?
body parts, then is it really masculinity?
I mean,
A lot of
yeah,
times
Buck
when you guys
Angel's
talk
a
about
piece of shit for
masculinity
being
associated
a
with men
medicalist,
being
but
manly,
still.
but I think more women are embracing their masculinity. Masculinity is still there. I mean, just other genders are using it. Being courageous, being powerful, more women are standing in their power, which is again associated with masculine, but it's not specific to just men. Women are no longer submissive, they're dominant. Women don't need men,
Hell yeah,
and
they
I
are.
think that most of America is realizing that anyone can be powerful on their own.
I believe that the masculine traits are inherently in men, and men have to take a position. You made a really good point by saying women are now becoming more masculine. They feel as if they don't need men, which I think is the problem here. I think that the way we
Women are becoming too masculine and they don't need men anymore. Oh no. Oh no. Men are becoming irrelevant? oh no, it's almost like you might have to make your own purpose in life instead of just fitting into a pre-made niche for yourself.
Designed by God, in my opinion, is that men are to lead, men are to be strong, men are to be brave. Men have to take their rightful position. The way our country has been structured to this point have been because of strong men who have taken a stand, who have fought wars. Now I feel like it's getting so lopsided that our families are degrading. People don't know where they're at in this country.
Oh, God.
Now in 2022, masculinity is being redefined. And I think what happens is people get upset when things start to change. No, I think that nobody ever wants to take that away from men. I think that what we want to do in the world now is start to understand what is masculinity. And it's always been really associated
it's a massive,
with very machismo.
Like complaining that women don't need you anymore is like such a massive self-own. You know, like just such a massive, massive self-own. Imagine going out and saying like, yeah, you know, women don't need me anymore, and I think that's just horrible. You know, women should be required to need me. Women should be required to need men, which is a wild thing, you know, because the idea of requirement means that women should be forced to need men, which just feels like weak-ass men saying that they can't, like, be cool and attractive enough, or in the full sense of the world, a word attractive enough to get their own women, to be cool enough that women might actually like them, you know? Imagine going on a 1 million sub YouTube channel and just saying like, yeah, I can't get women, and I know other people who can't get women, and so women should be forced to be with them. Yeah. You have so little faith in men and masculinity that you think women should be forced to be with men.
Space. And now there's different kinds of men in the world. There's not just biological men. There's also trans men or people who want to be masculine. So I think what's happening now is people are pushing against change because change is scary and people don't understand. And so I think men, biological men, feel under attack when I think that's not what's happening.
Again, this is another example. I would really like it if Jubilee would stop portraying the people who come on the program as just like normal dudes or normal people, you know? Because again, Buck Angel is a well-known person. Like, don't portray this as someone just walking off the street.
Happening here.
The point that you made is 100% correct. There are different phases and people are experiencing in different ways. The feminist movement is, I think they are attacking masculinity within men. I don't want a man to open the door for me. I don't need a man in my life. I can do all of these different.
But maybe the idea isn't that I don't want a man to open the door for me, but like opening a door for a man or a woman is a nice gesture that one should do, and it shouldn't be a move dictated by whether or not the person you're holding the door open for is a man, woman, NB, etc.
Different things. What they're doing is attacking men, and that's what's causing the problem.
What part of the feminist group feels like it's attacking? Because I know that most feminism is like wanting equal pay or...
Well, you just said that women not needing men is somehow empowering. You know, having a man is somehow less empowering, or being an individual is somehow less
But that's
empowering.
how women feel.
Right.
Women actually are saying that because that's how they feel. It's as
But
if,
that's not how every woman feels.
but no one's
That's just
saying
an
every woman.
assumption
They're only
of how
women speak for themselves. So
Right.
all of you are going to have different opinions as biological men.
Absolutely.
Women all have different opinions. Oh, you see a very specific group of women saying this.
I mean, you did just say that's how women feel. So are you speaking on behalf of all
No,
women?
no, I'm not. Let me take that back. The women who are saying that feel that way.
Why do you feel that women in general feel disempowered?
No, I don't think in general. No. That's a generalized statement. You can't say that. I said
you're the
women.
one
No, I
who
did
said
not. I
women
said the
feel
women who
disempowered.
say that.
You associated somehow women are now embracing masculinity, which means that they are...
No. Oh my god, this is going to be the most infuriating, like, set of just, like, attempts at gotchas on these trans men. This is, Can't say the things I want to say, because they'd be TOS.
Empowered because they don't need a man.
Or right. Men feel empowered when women need
But
them.
I don't think that women's empowerment comes from having a man or not having a man. So why is it always associated that,
Then why is men's empowerment contingent on having a woman?
a woman's now empowered because she doesn't need a man? A woman has always been empowered. Women have never been.
But they've never felt that.
Women have always been empowered. Okay, bud. Okay. Tell that to literally every woman born before women could vote. Literally within your parents' lifetime, kiddo, your mom couldn't have her own bank account. You fuck. Women couldn't have credit cards and shit until like the late 70s. Because they were not responsible enough to handle money. Oh my god. I hate Jubilee so goddamn much. I hate it. This is awful. I would take 100 hours of AF pack over this. I would take hundreds of hours of neo-Nazi speeches over how frustrating this is to me personally.
Not true.
I mean, if we go back to the 1920s, if you're going to do that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about.
We don't even have to do that. You don't have to go back to the 1920s. Yeah. Guess what? Native Americans, just as a generalized group of people, weren't able to vote until 1964. Indigenous women weren't allowed to vote until 1964. Even after women's suffrage. Fuck. Learn your history.
Right now, you actually think women are empowered right now?
Absolutely, women are empowered.
Who's the vice president? And how long did it take for her to become a vice president?
Oh, fuck.
There is a right and wrong way
to
be a man. Take a second to think about it.
I think that when I originally heard the question being asked, I didn't agree with it, but men are not.
We have a woman as vice president. Sexism is over. We elected Obama. Racism is over. Motherfuckers. I am losing it. I am losing my shit.
Individuals. Men are not to be cowards. Men are to lead their families. And men who do not display that, I don't believe that they are men, in my opinion. And all of the qualities that I see in my father is what I believe a man should be.
All of those characteristics are what make a man. And when I see a man be a coward in the truth, in just speaking the truth, or sticking up for what's right, especially today in America with everything going on, I'm like, those are not men. My name is Clarkson. I'm 24 years old, and I'm a conservative man. My biggest question for the other side really is, are you happy? Anybody that wants to fundamentally change society and change gender roles, to me, that's not happiness. And if we want to fight for it.
Yeah, exactly. They're changing gender roles because they're unhappy. They are unhappy with the assigned gender role, so they choose a different one. God. Oh my god. And he's such a weird face. Such a weird goddamn face. Does he even have eyebrows? What? Okay, whatever.
Acceptance. We need to start with acceptance, which is accepting society for what it is.
At the end of the day, we're all men, and I don't believe there's any wrong way to be a man. We're just redefining what it means to be a man.
But there are things that naturally come to men. So when you say we're just redefining what being a man is, you have to understand you're redefining a fabric in society that has kept the human race and got it to where it is today. So just like aimlessly.
You know, like, women play arguably a more vital role in perpetuating and getting the human race to where it is. Whatever. We could pick that apart for, I feel like, hours.
Throwing out, oh, well, we're just redefining what it is to be a man. That's not just like a light subject that we should be talking about.
But why do you think it has to stay the same?
Why do you think it is a light subject that we're talking about? Maybe it's like there's decades and decades of research on this topic. Hell, maybe there was decades and decades of research on this topic back in the 1930s before it all mysteriously went up in flames because of the Nazis. Really makes you think.
Have the same thing for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Do you not see the state
It's not the same thing. It's just it's keeping the same qualities.
But do you see the state of our world today? It's not perfect. It's been led by men like throughout all of history, and look where it's gone.
So, we're talking about redesigning what it means to be a man. So, what do you want to bring to traditional men?
I think it's embracing that you can be vulnerable. I think that a lot of men want to portray strength, but men are people, and I know that men have feelings.
Being a man and masculinity, those are two different things. And I believe that we can redefine whatever that means to anybody by including other types of men or other types of masculinity. I myself am a father, I have a child. Some people would disagree with me being a father because I am transgender. But that being said, I present to the world as a male.
Mad Laden, thank you very much for the raid. I appreciate it. Welcome, fellow peeps. We are watching one of the most infuriating videos I've seen in a while, and of course it's a Jubilee video. So buckle in, buckos, because we mauled in today. Also, chat, go follow Mad Laden, doing some really cool stuff that you should keep in your head. Hey, A for Andre. I'm a loser and I hate it. Hell yeah. Let's see here.
My child sees me as a man.
There's proper ways to be vulnerable, right? You don't have to break down in front of your family and cry. It's okay to suffer in silence as well. Strong men, I believe, exude the qualities that you guys are referring to. I think
it's okay to suffer in silence, he says, looking at the trans men on the panel, implying you should suffer in silence.
Problem is overcorrection, right? Some people believe that men need to cry and lay on the ground and be feminine like women. My name is Brandon. I'm 34 years old and I'm a conservative man. I had a lot of curiosities about what it's like to be a person who believes that they're a trans man. You know, I feel like God has created all of us very uniquely. And although I have beliefs and I follow the Bible to the T, I still want to know from other people what their experiences are. Doesn't mean I have to agree, but I really want to know what other people are feeling from the person who's experiencing it real time.
I have male privilege.
Oh my God.
Oh, sit over.
I've lived both lives, and I can tell you firsthand that it does exist. I am taken much more seriously in my career since I've transitioned as a man. Prior to transitioning, I would work just as hard, if not harder, for the same position and not be considered. The minute that I transition, I am immediately taken more seriously. I can give you an example. Obviously with COVID, there's like the mask mandate, right? So I have to tell customers all the time, it needs to be above your nose, right? I do that all day. My manager who's above me, who is a woman, will have to go to them, tell them they give her a fight. But the minute I just look in their direction, it's up. It doesn't seem like a privilege, but it is, because now my manager has to work 3 times harder for something that's so simple.
I think the word privilege is the
Speaking of chat, if you do not gift subs and bits for this 6-hour plus stream and this particular piece of pain, you are transphobic and you are engaging in some sort of awful discrimination against me. So gift subs, bits, and use exclamation point tip to prove your lack of bigotry.
the thing that turns a lot of people off with this conversation. But that being said, again, myself living my life as a female, pretty much half my life, and then now half my life as a man, there is no way I could not be honest about the fact that my life has changed drastically. Also being a white man, that's also a conversation a lot of people don't want to have. But I have privilege of being white and privilege also of being a man now. I can walk into any room and command that room in a heartbeat because people just do that with men. And I think the thing is that biological men are born into that space. So they'll never ever see it. Why do we now as women who have become men get to have this thing? It's 100% because we are men. We look like men. Nobody would ever know. No one would ever know that we used to be women. So it's actually a real lived experience.
Melissa Biss, thank you for gifting a sub to Buckle Industries. And buckle up, friends.
I agree with a lot of what you all are saying as far as like transitioning. But as a black man, privilege looks way different for me, because if I'm walking down the street, then I'm seen as a threat by police, by women, by anybody else. Being seen as a man is where my privilege stops and where everything else begins. So I don't see it as privilege.
Okay, I got a lot to say about this topic here.
Boy.
And first of all, I mean, we have to be transparent and honest with each other. You know, I think that
Fire Red
not
Emblem,
everybody
give
on
it
this
3
side
gifted subs.
presents 100% like a man. Like if I saw you.
Oh my god. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let's see. Can we get a good shot here? You're saying you walk down the street, you see this guy, you're like, that's not a man to you? I'm sorry, that's bullshit. That is bullshit. The only reason you're saying that is because they're on a trans panel. I think he's saying the opposite. Yeah, well, let's see here. Let's see where he goes.
Being seen as a man is where my privilege stops.
You think he's trying to compliment them?
Everything else begins. So I don't see it as privilege.
Let's see.
Okay,
Let's find
I got
out.
a lot to say about this topic here. And first of all, I mean, we have to be transparent and honest with each other. You know, I think that not everybody on this side presents 100% like a man. Like if I saw you in the streets, I wouldn't think you were a man. You know, men have it really hard in this world.
Yeah, did that sound like a fucking compliment? Does that sound like a compliment to a trans man? Yeah, no, it didn't, did it? No, it didn't.
They've always had it hard in this world. The wars have been fought by men. They've died in the hundreds of thousands. Men commit suicide more. Men work more the dangerous jobs. You know, if somebody broke in this place right now, who are they going to expect to defend everybody in here? It's going to be the men. If your family fails.
Yeah, who are the women? Who are the non-men who suffer continuously after the men die in battle?
They're not looking at your wife. They're not. They're looking at the man. You know, I just want people to understand it. There's some advantages that men have, and then also men do struggle in custody and all kinds of different things.
100%. I 100% agree with you as a man now, right? But what I think my perception of it is different than yours, because you were born male, you were raised male, you have a whole other space in that, and I totally respect your opinion on that, and I believe that that is a true lived experience as a born man.
Yeah, and let me add with the black man, because we have a total different reality in that. I don't, in no way, form, or fashion do I go into a room and I feel like I'm less than. I think I command presence when I go into a room because the way I'm dressed, and I'm tall. I go in the streets. I've never had a person cross the street. I've never been attacked by a police officer. I was a police officer. You know, I've been pulled over probably 3 times in my entire life.
I mean,
oh, by the way, for those of you who came in, this guy is a very famous and well-known conservative political commentator known as Officer Tatum. So, Yeah, keep that in mind.
Because the way I'm dressed and I'm tall. I go in the streets. I've never had a person cross the street. I've never been attacked by a police officer. I was a police officer. You know, I've been pulled over probably 3 times in my entire life.
I mean, my biggest question with this and why I don't necessarily agree with it is because when it comes to privilege, there's not really a way to quantify it. It's very subjective. So like your version of male privilege and your version of male privilege are very
was a
different.
cop.
So it's hard to see the other side because you've never lived it.
Yeah.
The difference between you and us is we see it because we've lived it. You have not. So it's easy to speak and be like, well, it doesn't exist. But well, how would you know?
Well, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I think everybody has certain privileges, but what I think the question here is...
Yeah, actually, yeah, there's a lot, there's a shit ton of sociological research that goes into actually figuring out what are the effects of this privilege at work in the real world. And it can sometimes be quite impactful. In fact, Officer Tatum, just prior to this, was talking about how different aspects of society, different aspects of the world affect men more than women, which would mean that in some ways there is a female privilege or a woman privilege, right? That there are problems that men have that women don't have to deal with. And vice versa, there are problems that women have that men don't have to deal with in our society. So, like, it would then stand to reason that, you know, if there are more problems to one group, say women, for example, that are not experienced by the other group, men, in this binary example, then, yeah, there could be some kind of disparity between those two, in which case, more often, men have some kind of privilege than women, though that would not also exclude the fringe cases where women have privilege over men. Pretty straightforward there. Also, chat, we have 1 minute left on this hype train if you would like to keep it going, and I would very much appreciate it.
Defines male privilege over women, because women have privileges too. Right. So is there a graph that you guys are calculating to make men have more than women, or what?
The privilege is not acknowledging what you have that comes so easy.
So do you think that your fear, because you live both sides,
right,
do you think your fear is something that you have in your mind, or you think it's a reality? Because no, let me say this: you never really changed as a person. You're the same person,
right?
That you
exactly.
were. So you have the same physical capabilities that you did.
No.
When you
no. This is one thing I think more trans people need to talk about when talking with hostile folks. A lot of trans people will say, you know, biologically, you know, male, but now I'm, you know, I transitioned my gender. But the issue is it doesn't work like that. Like, the process of transitioning, if you're on hormone replacement therapy or getting surgeries, those are changes to your biology. You know, they're changes to your body composition, physically. So, like, being on hormones does biologically change your body. It does shift where you are on that biological spectrum. It might be harder to shift where you are on a biological spectrum, but you can do that. That is a thing you do.
You were a woman.
No.
You don't?
My strength is entirely different after taking
what
hormones.
percentage would you say?
More than 100%.
Okay,
I weighed
so,
like
but
100 pounds,
but
now I weigh like 133.
you're still not probably as strong as me.
But it's not about strength.
Okay, so does that mean any man who's not as strong as Officer Tatum is not really a man? You know, like, again, these arguments are so dog shit. You know who else on this panel isn't as strong as this guy? This motherfucker sitting right here. He's like tiny. He's tiny as hell. He's a cisgender man, though.
It's that women are targeted. Men are not targeted. I mean, maybe sometimes. I'm not saying it's never going to happen.
They're targeted by other men.
Right. But women are targeted by other men. I think women have less of a safe space. That's
I disagree. Men don't have a safe space. If you go to certain
But I'm talking
cities,
about
they get murdered by other
Okay, but I'm not
men,
talking about certain cities.
more
I'm
so
talking
than
about
women.
everyday life.
Yeah.
Does it change your chromosome from XX to XY? No, probably not. However, how many people know what their chromosomes are? I've never had my chromosomes checked out. I've never had a DNA test to check out my chromosomes. Have you? Because I can tell you this, there are an awful lot of circumstances in which someone's chromosomes might be XX or XY, but for a variety of circumstances and biological happenings, they have grown up their entire lives believing themselves to be cisgender women or cisgender men. And there's more than XX and XY. So it starts getting much more complicated the deeper you go into it. Yeah, you could be XXY and never even know it. You could be, there are a whole lot of things that can happen too. Beyond chromosomal makeup. How hormones wash the body in the womb play a huge role. How hormones are deployed throughout the body during adolescence and during your teenage years changes a whole goddamn lot. So, yeah. It's pretty interesting, pretty complicated, and yeah. Yeah, I saw a college professor stopped having their students test their chromosomes because a classroom was not a place for them to learn something so big about themselves. Yeah, and the issue is those types of biological, snafus are way more common than one might think. All men chromosomes are XY, all women chromosomes are XX. You can't change that no matter how many pills you take. Yeah, have you had a DNA test? Do you know what your chromosomes are? Or have you just assumed your entire life? Because again, sex is complicated. And I think we might need to watch the sex video. We might need to watch the sex video, chat. It's been a while, and I can tell we have someone in chat who needs a reminder that sex is really complicated.
In high school biology, we usually learn that the sexes in humans are fixed and concrete. Whether you're male or female is black and white and rooted in your DNA. Your 23rd pair of chromosomes is either two X chromosomes or an X and a Y. That's it. End of story. And that's essentially what scientists thought too. But it turns out that sex isn't that straightforward. In fact, biologists today are saying sex is a spectrum, and the scientific community is still working on understanding and respecting the people who fall in the middle of that spectrum. To get this out of the way right up front, we're not talking about gender or sexuality here. Gender refers to social and cultural attributes and understandings of men and women and their roles, though not every culture has only two categories, and it's increasingly seen as a spectrum. Plus, the gender you identify as may or may not be the same one as what you express with things like your clothing and behavior, all of which can also be on a spectrum. Sexuality describes who you are attracted to, and it can be equally complicated and on a spectrum, and where you are on the spectrum.
Oh, sorry I made it complicated by taking biology courses beyond 6th grade.
Spectrums isn't necessarily fixed. What we are talking about today is your biology, including your chromosomes, your hormones, your gonads, and your genitals. The catch is that these biological features don't always agree with each other. And
science isn't complicated, guys. I throw apple up, it come down. Look, why do I need a formula for that? Why do I need a theory of gravity? Thing go up, it come down. Super simple.
Certainly don't always conform to those high school health class diagrams that tell us there's a single, universally correct pathway to being male and female. In fact, it's estimated that nearly 2% of live births are born with congenital conditions of atypical sex development. That basically means that something in their chromosomes, hormones, gonads, or genitals is different from what many people expect of a boy or a girl. This used to be known as being intersex, but these days it's better described as having differences of sexual development.
Fun fact. The likelihood that you are intersex is greater than the likelihood that you are a natural redhead. There are more intersex people on Earth than there are redheaded people. So, yeah, just as an FYI. You probably shouldn't assume what your chromosomes are without knowing actually what they are.
Development, or DSDs. And while nearly 2% might not sound like a lot, it means that there could be 130 million people or more with DSDs. If all those people were in one country, it would be among the top 10 most populous countries in the world. Plus, DSDs are not always something you can see. People can spend their whole lives thinking they're one sex.
I'm not a natural redhead.
Based on anatomy, only to find at least part of them.
I'm kind of a natural redhead. Like, there is red in my hair, just not predominantly red.
Tells a different story. You see, your sex is the result of both sexual determination and sexual differentiation. Sexual determination has to do with what chromosomes you get. Those largely determine what happens to your body during sexual differentiation, the process by which you develop the physiological characteristics associated with your sex. And contrary to what you might think, that differentiation doesn't stop when you're born. It continues throughout.
What? You mean sexual differentiation and the secondary sex characteristics that we associate with maleness and femaleness continue to develop after birth? You mean this incorporates more than just your chromosomes? Why, I never!
Your life. And that means there are a lot of moments when differences between people can happen. So of course, there are a ton of different outcomes. We tend to put these outcomes into two boxes based on visible anatomy, or what scientists call phenotypes.
Furious Gyms? No, I'm sorry. You were born a baby, you're always a baby. You're our baby.
Phenotypical males have testicles and a penis, while phenotypical females have ovaries, a uterus, a vagina, and vulva. But in reality, none of the traits we use to discriminate between the sexes are truly binary. There's a lot of variation within what we call male or female, and there's a lot of overlap that's normal too. Anatomically, someone might look phenotypically female on the outside, but not have ovaries or a uterus, or have tissues from both ovaries and testes. And
You mean I can't just look at someone and assume what's inside their bodies? What? But I was told that if I see someone with booba, I can assume that they have a hoo-ha.
Aren't any clearer, because when it comes to chromosomes, people don't always just get two X's or an X and a Y. X's and Y's contain genes that help determine sex, with the Y chromosome conferring the genes that enable you to develop male reproductive parts. But the processes for producing sperm and eggs are really complicated, and they can lead to lots of different results. In this process, abbreviated version, specialized cells basically duplicate themselves, then undergo 2 rounds of division to...
Well, guys, it's really simple. It's really simple, guys.
Produce reproductive cells, or gametes, that have half of the parent's genetic material. So it makes one set of 23 chromosomes. But sometimes the chromosomes don't split into exact sets of 23, and that means...
You know, the rush. You are correct. You are referring to the distinction that is known as biological sex versus social construction. That this is sex and gender. These are the two things. And sex does change over time. As you may have noticed, your genitalia and your body are different now than they were when you were born. Please understand, the body is complicated and changes over time, which is really the core idea I'm trying to impart onto you. That the things we take for granted about our bodies are actually quite fluid, and how your body is now is different from how it's going to be in 20 years. Why is it only the human species that feels confused about their sex? Other mammals don't? Yo, there are other mammals who will fuck corpses, okay? There are other mammals who will go out there and just cannibalize their own. All right. There are also other animals on Earth that have 26 different sexualities. There are animals who, if they don't know, if they can't tell if there's another man or another woman around, they'll just straight up like have sex with themselves, okay, and reproduce that way. The idea, how come other animals don't struggle with their sex? That's because you're a dipshit who doesn't know about like biology. Again, if you knew anything about human biology, you'd also understand that other animals have very complicated biology.
A whole bunch of possible combinations of X's and Y's that a person can end up with. For instance, people can
Yeah, your body changes because you're growing up. Yeah. Exactly. Do you know what happens to your body when you grow up? When you hit around the age of 12 or so, or 13, 14, maybe even 15 if you're a late bloomer, what happens to your body to make it grow up? What is one of the biological processes that happens? You get booba. Yes, you hit puberty. You hit puberty. And you know what happens during puberty? Your body makes hormones. And as a result of those hormones, your body changes. And you know what happens when trans people take hormones? Their bodies change. It's almost like some kind of biology is happening within the body. If only we knew more, like, say, from a science video.
Inherit 3 X's or an X and 2 Y's. These folks are normally taller than average. Those with 3 X's have slender builds and sometimes have minor learning disorders. The people who have an X and 2 Y's, on the other hand, tend to have more acne because of the extra testosterone in their systems. In both cases, people retain full fertility. Then there's Turner syndrome, which happens when you just get 1 X. That results in female characteristics, but the people who have it tend to be shorter, don't really go through puberty, and may have mental disabilities and are sterile. And Klinefelter syndrome, which results from 2 X's and a Y, is the most common chromosomal sex anomaly. It happens in 1 in 600 male births and can cause lower testosterone production and cause incomplete testicular development, though the symptoms can be minor enough that a person isn't diagnosed until later in life. Now, there's also the fact that all your cells in your body don't necessarily have the same chromosomal makeup.
What? You mean individual cells in your body might have different chromosomal makeups? Meaning you're not guaranteed if you have one cell that's XY that your other cells are going to be XY? Damn! It's almost like the body's really complicated.
Like, what? Did I learn nothing but lies in high school? But it's true. Someone with mosaicism can develop from a single fertilized egg but have a patchwork of genetically different cells. And someone who's a genetic chimera has different cells because they develop from 2 different fertilized eggs that merge in the womb. In both cases, it's possible to end up with a mix of cells with different sex chromosomes. And depending on the distribution of those cells, mosaicism and chimerism can result in ambiguous sexual characteristics or both male and female reproductive body parts. It's even been shown that pregnant people and their fetuses frequently swap stem cells through the placenta in a phenomenon known as microchimerism. That means a chromosomal female can be carrying around XY cells and her son can have XX ones. In some studies,
but you can never change your chromosomes. Your chromosomes, they're set in stone, baby. The point I'm trying to make is that I'm a dumbass who needs to know more about biology before I flap my gums.
These cells have been shown to stick around in the mother for several decades. But all that said, there are also plenty of people with double X or XY chromosomes that also have differences of sexual development. That's in part because at least 25 genes play a role in sex differentiation. So
What? But I was told just X and Y genes in the chromosomes play a role. You mean there are 24 other ones? Oh my god! Somebody call the textbook manufacturers because they got it wrong in 6th grade. And it's definitely not my fault because I didn't do any research. I just know that trans people make me feel weird, and I'm going to argue that it's based on the science I know, even though the science is really complicated and it's actually not supporting my position at all.
And relocations of these genes can result in a range of differences. Genes necessary for male development can be swapped onto the X chromosome, for example, or someone can end up with multiple or mutated versions of other sex-determining genes. And some of these are on other chromosomes and are inherited as run-of-the-mill recessive traits. All of these genes really start to be influential around 6 weeks of development. You see, at 6 weeks, the fetus has a pair of bulges called the gonadal ridges next to its kidneys, and they have the potential to develop into ovaries or testes. The fetus at this point also has 2 sets of ducts. One set can develop into the uterus and fallopian tubes, while the other set has the potential to become the epididymis, vas deferens, and seminal vesicles. And what happens from there is somewhat of a balancing act of different genes working in concert. Essentially, different networks of genes shout male and female, and when that balance gets knocked slightly askew, it can move a person along the sex spectrum. Take SRY, discovered in
the sex spectrum?
the 1990s. This is the male programming gene, and it has a big effect on development. If it ends up on the chromosome of someone who is XX, it can cause them to develop testes instead of ovaries. This can happen because there's a step in sperm and egg production when chromosomes swap some DNA with their partner chromosomes. And even though the X and Y chromosomes generally don't join in on this DNA swapping process, they sometimes do. Plus, other mutations that occur during the production of gametes can result in multiple or mutated versions of SRY or other sex-determining genes because it's not the only gene that matters. There are also genes that actively...
There are other genes? Fuck!
Encourage the fetus to develop female characteristics. For instance, the gene Wnt4 suppresses testicular development and promotes ovarian development, and multiple copies of it can cause incomplete female gonads to develop in people who are XY. Gonad development also triggers the production of sex-specific hormones, which results in further sex-specific development. But some people have differences of sex differentiation that limit their ability to respond to those hormones. Complete androgen insensitivity syndrome is one of these. People who have it are unaffected by male sex hormones because they have some kind of mutation to the protein that these hormones bind to, called the androgen receptor. And that means that while they have testes and a Y chromosome, their exterior genitals appear female or in between. There's also congenital adrenal hyperplasia, the most common DSD out there. That's when the adrenal glands underproduce cortisol and overproduce androgens, the male hormone group that includes testosterone. The underproduction of cortisol can lead to health problems, while the overproduction of androgens can lead to external...
Do these pills give you male tendencies too? So what the hormone replacement therapy does is it kickstarts a new puberty that your body goes through over a prolonged period of time. Much like how first puberty in people goes from like age 12 to 25, the second puberty can also take a similar amount of time to reach full maturity. So, yes, for example, trans men who start testosterone experience typical puberty changes. They develop acne, their voice drops, their muscle strength increases, etc. They start developing facial hair, etc. Their body undergoes a very dramatic biological change. Similarly, a thing like that happens for trans women. Trans women begin growing breast tissue. And also there are various changes to the genitals as well. But the trans women get larger hips. They get a whole bunch of different changes. Softer skin, thinning of hair across the body. It's pretty comprehensive.
male genitalia paired with internal female gonads in people with XX
The mouth
chromosomes.
feel, yes.
Some of these conditions don't fully present themselves until puberty or later. In fact, some aren't realized at all until a person seeks some kind of medical care that reveals them. Like in 2014, doctors reported one case of a 70-year-old father of 4 whose, quote, hernia turned out to be a uterus with fallopian tubes.
I'm just going to play that back so we can really absorb that.
Realized at all until a person seeks some kind of medical care that reveals them. Like in 2014, doctors reported one case of a 70-year-old father of 4.
Okay, so we have a 70-year-old father of 4
whose, quote, hernia turned out to be a uterus with fallopian tubes.
Who had a uterus with fallopian tubes. The Rush. Have you ever been checked for a uterus with fallopian tubes? Have you ever had your body checked for that? Have you ever had your DNA tested? You may or may not be a biologically cis male. So if a father of 4 has no idea they have a fucking uterus inside of them, maybe you should learn a bit more about your own body before you start patrolling other people's bodies.
In many cases, differences in sexual development are notable from birth.
I mean, you don't... I never will, but whatever you do, I accept it. I mean, I'm glad you accept me. I just want you to know that I accept you, even if you've had a uterus your entire life and didn't know it.
For those newborns, it may be possible to assign a gender based on what they're more likely to identify as they grow up. The thing is, with all of the things that can happen during sexual development...
Yeah, what a fucking existential crisis for that guy, though. 70 years old and he finds out he has a uterus.
When a child is born with an obvious difference of sex development...
I don't need to be checked. I'm a male. I was born male. How do you know? Do you have, like, a memory of being in the womb and, like, all of the biological processes, or what? This guy just told us a story about a guy who was a male, who was born a male, and then after fathering 4 children and living to the age of 70, found out he had a uterus. He didn't know that he had a uterus for 70 goddamn years. So, like, how do you know? And unless you're a transgender person, you are cisgender. That's kind of how the term works.
Development, it's not always clear why.
What do you mean? How do I know? Well, what I mean is, have you had your DNA checked? Do you know that you are actually XY? Or have you just been assuming it your entire life? Because if you haven't checked, you have no idea what your chromosomes are. You've just been assuming what they are. And how do you know you don't have an unused ovary inside your body somewhere? How the fuck do you even get DNA checked? I mean, you probably go to the hospital and be like, I need my DNA checked, doc. I don't know. I might have an ovaries. Or maybe, like, I don't know, use one of those, like, ancestry.com things. I don't know. There's probably a service that lets you do that. Because he found out he had a uterus, he's still a man. His penis shoots sperms. But you know there are infertile men, right? Like, there are cisgender men who don't have uteruses who are infertile. Like, you know that, right? Like, whose penises shoot sperms, but maybe the sperms aren't, like, forming right, or maybe they're just, you know, he's just shooting blanks. It happens. God, I can't. You know what? This has been a really fun conversation. I've been enjoying it.
Chromosomes often isn't enough, and sometimes a hormonal test isn't either. And even if the child's doctors have a sense of what's going on, determining what, if any, treatment is necessary can be challenging. Back in the 1960s...
Yeah, who shoots blanks? What? percentage of men are infertile? Around 10% of all men are infertile. So, oh, sorry, 10 to 15% of men are infertile. So, I don't know, do you have 10 male friends? At least one of them is infertile.
It was thought that growing up without clearly defined sexual organs would cause emotional trauma. So there was a push towards performing surgery on infants to clearly assign them a sex. And because of social stigmas surrounding DSDs, parents were often encouraged to keep all of this a secret, even from the child. So people grew up without knowing kind of important details.
It's true. You might be the one shooting blanks, Rush. I hate to break it to you. That is a very real possibility.
About their own bodies. It's hard to get numbers.
He makes sure his friends don't shoot blanks. Yo, bro, I just gotta check to make sure you're not shooting blanks, bro. It's not gay, I promise. Where do you get the data from? This data came from, let me take a look, came from the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So, yeah, that's where the data comes from. Also, you could probably also look it up and find it from other sources as well. Here, I'll find a different source just in case. Let's see here. Okay, here's Azura Vascular Care. Let's see. According to this, 1 in 6 couples in the U.S. deal with infertility. Interesting. Let's find, you know what, you're probably not going to be satisfied with just 2. Let's go for the Holy Trinity here. Let's see. Oh, the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic is pretty reputable. Yeah, again, Mayo Clinic, arguably the best medical clinic on earth. About 1 in 7 couples is infertile, which works out to about 15% of the U.S. male population. So there you go.
On how many of these surgeries were or even are being performed. It's also hard to know exactly how these surgeries affect patients. But as adults, many report pain, scarring, and
yeah, I mean, if you do, it's true. If you look hard enough, you can find any bullshit. But at least my bullshit comes from the U.S. medical department and also from the most reputable medical clinic on earth. So, there you go.
Loss of sensation. Also, people with DSDs do report high rates of gender dysphoria, where their chosen gender does not align with their assigned sex. And there's an association between gender dysphoria and mental health issues like self-harm behaviors, so these surgeries may contribute to mental health problems later in life. Though it's important to note that such issues are less likely if people have supportive and affirming parents who accept them as they are. And sometimes surgery is medically necessary, like to unblock the urethra. Also, surgery can help to preserve fertility, or in the case of complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, to reduce the risk of...
This is true. I am enjoying this particularly because it's distracting me from the god-awful Jubilee video that we're about to get back to.
Testicular cancer. But from a medical perspective, those surgeries don't need to be performed on infants. In fact, most of the time, differences in genital anatomy at birth aren't something that needs to be fixed. At least not until the person is old.
I mean, I'm not attacking you for not understanding why people want to change their sex. It's pretty simple. The reason people want to change their sex is because they want to change their sex, and because they feel a compulsive need to do so. A compulsion that causes them significant mental anguish, which is why gender dysphoria has typically been called a mental disorder of some kind. It is an mistaken alignment, I suppose, a different type of alignment along the gender spectrum that doesn't align with your biology. And so you can take steps to change your biology to bring it into alignment with your self-perception. And that is generally perceived by all medical science that we know of as the most effective way of dealing with it. Why? What is the reason? I don't know. Why do people get cancer? It just happens. It's a thing that happens. For example, I had to have my gallbladder removed. I had to go in, get surgery. It was very unexpected, very sudden. And it turned out my gallbladder was infected. And I asked the doctor at the time, why is this happening? Did I do something wrong? Like, what caused this? And he said, nothing. It's just bad luck. And then I went and got the surgery to take my gallbladder out, and now I feel great. So it's just a thing that happens, and people take the medical steps necessary to get on with their lives. That's all it is. The gall of him. You punish me, chat.
Own choices about what they want their bodies to look like. So nowadays, healthcare is moving away from a surgical approach. If a DSD is identified at birth, treatment is more likely to include therapy and hormonal replacement than surgery. Often, a DSD team is involved in care, which can include geneticists, endocrinologists, and psychologists or psychiatrists. They help the family decide if any interventions are immediately and medically necessary, and help provide care and support to the child with DSD and their family throughout childhood. Unfortunately, this kind of care still isn't available everywhere. For now, researchers are working to better understand the development of both sex and gender over time, and to gain a clearer sense of when kids begin to understand their own gender identity. The problem, of course, is the fact that from clothes to restrooms to organized sports, they are raised in a society that is set up around a binary that just isn't binary. But researchers are thinking about how we can make our overall discussions and understanding of sex even more inclusive and more accurate. Because even though biological sex may seem like one of those things that is relatively straightforward in a very, very complicated world, it's not. And while there's probably still a long way to go to understand it, we are making progress. Before we go, we'd like to give a special thank you to our patrons on Patreon.
You're not suckering me into supporting you, Hank Green. But I appreciate this content. So if, for example, I change into a woman from a man, but I'm still attracted to girls, does that make me a lesbian? Yes. Yeah. You got it. That is correct. Trans women who date women and women who are into them are lesbians. Or if a trans woman is attracted to both men and women, and NBs, that would make them bisexual or pansexual. Yeah. In fact, I have a lovely girlfriend, and I am bisexual. It's pretty great.
That's a blanket
Have you been attacked as a woman?
I have.
I have been.
I've been raped. I've been attacked. I can go on and on and on.
Oh God, I was not prepared for that.
I was homeless, living in the streets, raped all the time.
Wait, that is where you lose us? Why? Okay, let's say you're walking down the street, Rush. You see a lady, she got big booba, she got big butt, she's wearing a tight red dress, and you're like, damn, I'm attracted to her. Does that make it, and you're a man, does that make you gay? Does it, like, you look at a hot lady and you're attracted to her, does that make you gay? Because I'd argue, no. No. If you're attracted to a lady and you're a man, that would make you straight. If you are attracted to a lady and you're a lady, that would make you lesbian or bisexual or pansexual. Because I guarantee you this, you have no idea when you see someone you are attracted to, what their genitals are, or if they've transitioned. You have no idea. You have no idea if the people you have kissed, made out with, had sex with before are trans or not. You don't. There have been many, many trans women who transition and get bottom surgery and then never, ever mention that they are trans again. Aw, I'm sorry, Furious Jims. It's because you're furious all the time. If you were cuddly Jims, you know? That is part of being a man. We are pigs. Okay, but also if a woman looks at another woman and is like, hey, that's a hot lady. Yeah, they're gay. We see what looks good and we go for it. Exactly. Women do the same thing. Oui? I don't speak French. I'm APAB, assigned pig at birth. Nice to meet you, Officer Entrama. Oh, God. I've cornered myself. I knew Entrama was a narc. Ain't no one 24. True. Oh God. Okay, this has been fun, but we about to go into some serious shit. So we're gonna back this up real quick.
Have you been attacked as a woman?
I have been. I've been raped. I've been attacked. I can go on and on and on. I was homeless, living in the streets, raped all the time. It happens. It's a real thing. Yeah. I didn't see the guys on the street getting raped, but
men do get raped.
100%. But the experience of
do you get catcalled down the street? Like,
I mean, women say things to me. When I was a police officer,
do you feel threatened? You feel empowered though, right?
No, I don't feel empowered. I feel that's disgusting.
But do you feel scared? Do you feel threatened when a woman catcalls you?
No, I don't. But I don't feel threatened if a man try to challenge.
Because you have that male.
Yeah.
Privilege.
Right. As a woman,
what if a man was whistling at you when you were walking down the street?
I've had it happen to me. I had gay men whistle to me. But
how does that make you feel?
I don't care.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you don't touch me, we cool.
Right.
You may think I'm attractive. That's fine. That's cool. I
think women will say the same thing. As long as you're not like trying to be predatory. And I've seen it because I go to clubs with my friends who are girls, and I have to tell the men to literally leave them alone because they keep going and they're predatory.
It's true. That's true. Last time I went to a club, guys just fucking grabbed me and would not let go. It was creepy as hell. This is the thing that happens.
They're literally scouting out for women that are drunk or whatever, not even drunk. She could say no 1,000 times and they're still gonna bother her. But the minute that I say something, they stop.
Women are not as strong as men and they get targeted. Sure, yes, that is a privilege that men have over women, but that doesn't mean that men have privilege because of that one situation. Men commit suicide way more than women do.
Because if we're gonna go that route, trans men commit suicide twice the rate.
But that's not general.
I think what's important here is to distinguish the fact that
oh fuck, this is gonna get bad.
Yes, no one is negating the fact that women can get preyed on. You know, there's situations where this happens, right? Like no one's gonna deny that.
I mean, Rush, it's pretty straightforward. Trans men are men, trans women are women. If you're attracted to a trans woman, that's pretty straight, assuming you're a man. If you're attracted to a trans man, that's pretty gay, assuming you're a man. If you're attracted to a non-binary person, you're pretty goddamn gay, regardless of your gender identity.
But we're also just trying to say that it's not like a one-sided coin here, where there's no like men are just, we just have it.
Is this Jubilee content? You bet your ass it is, and it is awful.
good and we can do whatever we want.
I do not believe that's true.
We can't even be the next Supreme Court justice because it's like.
But I live as a man, so I see the difference now.
Yeah.
When I said I have privilege and I walk into a room, of course, but then there's other things that are expected of me now as a man that I would never knew were expected.
So
of
would
me.
you guys agree that there's such thing as female privilege?
Oh, sure, 100%.
My wife has privilege because she has me.
That's right.
So she don't have to worry about her
Right
safety
on.
because I'm there.
I don't believe that.
My wife's privilege is me is really funny to me because it is that is an acknowledgement that men have privilege that women don't have, right? By having him be her privilege, that's the argument that they've all been making the entire time. God.
I mean,
No. Jubilee isn't centrist as fuck. Jubilee is conservative as fuck, okay? Because they portray all these people as like random people they pulled off the street. This is a goddamn political commentator who goes on with Candace Owens all the time, and I'm pretty sure he has a YouTube channel that has over 1 million viewers. Let me just check. Yeah, he has. This guy has 1.8 million subscribers on YouTube.
And as a man, it's like
portraying him as just a
marketing
rando
for women-owned brands. I can't, like I said, I can't be next Supreme Court justice. Like women are very much more empowered today, which I think is. I don't have no problem with it. I mean, like, good for you. But I think that the man I probably have privilege because I'm 6 foot 210. Like no one's picking on me when I walk down the street. I used to live in Chicago and. I used to walk home all the time at night, but like, was that smart? Probably not, but I felt a little safe because, I'm not 5 foot 100 pounds. I'm Max, I'm 29, and I'm a conservative man. In today's society, women and men can be whatever they want and be as successful or as strong or as big of a leader as they choose. So I'm just wondering, in a society that is so seemingly more level than ever before, why are we transitioning to different genders to find?
Yeah, also, if a hot lady is in front of you and you're like, I'm a rape her, the issue is you in that scenario.
And what are we looking for?
Biology determines gender.
So
yeah, okay. Okay, Buck Angel, you do your trans medicalist thing.
So sex and gender, people try to argue that they're different, but sex and gender actually go hand to hand. And
they don't. They demonstrably don't. For example, you have no idea what the DNA is of people that you're interacting with on a daily basis. You don't know what the genitals are of the people you're interacting with on a daily basis. You aren't like reaching your hand into somebody's pants to see if they have a dick or a vagina or some combination thereof before you start gendering them. Like, sorry, demonstrably sex and gender are different things. Wait, is that Buck Angel? Yeah, Buck Angel is the guy with the white beard.
Our biology, being a man, comes down to every fiber within our body. So whether that be DNA, chromosomes, testosterone levels, bone density, there's a whole bunch of different factors that go into it, and it all has to do with biology.
Yo, also, if a woman is faking an orgasm, it just means your oral is shit.
So biology, I 100% believe in biology. Today we talk about biology being a social construct. I disagree with that as a transgender person. I was born biologically female. I always acknowledge that. And today I live as a male. Now that being said, sex and gender, they are trying to separate those things. Gender can be, I've chosen my gender. As you see, nobody would, I think, probably understand that I used to be a female. Now, many people do, like you just said, believe that sex and gender are one thing and you can never change those. I'm not trying to change anything. I'm trying to show the world that this is how I feel by presenting the outside. But I think denying biology is where we get into a lot of problems.
I mean, again, saying biology is a social construct isn't inherently wrong, right? Social construct doesn't mean that a thing doesn't exist. right? We understand this, right? Like, just because race is a social construct doesn't mean that the effects of racializing society aren't real. Adadak, thank you very much for subscribing. Just because gender is a social construct doesn't mean that our conceptions, our gendering of things isn't a thing that happens, isn't a phenomenon that happens. And additionally, our understanding of all science is socially constructed. It is agreed upon terminology. It is agreed upon ideas and fundamental assumptions that allow us to build these things. And the socially constructed element of this, beyond that, is talking about how we classify different things. Classification is inherently socially constructed. And when we're talking about sex in this context, that is an issue of classification. So when we're talking about this, that's something to keep in mind. But that doesn't mean that biological differences don't exist. That is why we have, for example, the word transgender and cisgender. These are terms meant to differentiate two groups of people. Now, additionally, sex exists along a spectrum. Biological sex exists along a spectrum. It is just called, I'm blanking on the word. Bimodal. It exists along a bimodal spectrum, which means, generally speaking, sex clumps up into two large groups, but then there are people who fall outside on either side of those two large groups, meaning you can fall in the middle, or you can fall in the hyper-masculine, hyper-feminine sides of that bimodal spectrum. This isn't overcomplicating things. This is literally just an extension of what we talked about for the last half hour that you very clearly did not pay attention to. So, yeah, sex exists, and sexual characteristics exist along that spectrum. So, yeah. Show the booba graph? No.
If you want to be, seen as a man, then
right on.
Who are you to? I don't care. I mean, you do you, whatever makes you happy. But I think it becomes a slippery slope. It's like, how are we going to deny basic human facts? Like, there's two genders.
I think that causes problems, and it causes problems for me.
Yeah.
Because the minute I start denying your biology, now you feel attacked by me. Right. And I don't want you to feel attacked by me. I never want you to feel, I want to be a part of, if that makes sense. You don't have to agree with my choice of how I live my life, but all I ask for is respect.
What do you have on your driver license and your birth certificate?
Right,
Did you change it to
great.
male?
Yeah, Buck Angel is such a pick-me trans man. He's a trans medicalist. He's like, I'm just like you. You don't have to like me. You don't have to agree with the way I live my life, but you have to just let me live. And the immediate question is, yeah, but but should society be validating your identity, Buck Angel? And let's see what he says. Let's see what he says.
So that being said, I transitioned to live as a man 29 years ago. So that was way before you see any of this stuff. And I had to acknowledge my biology, right? That being said, my license, I travel the world. It has to say male. Can you imagine if I showed up at the airport, they're like, female? Dude, there's something going on here. But I actually got my birth certificate changed to male. I was the first person to do that here in Los Angeles. But that being said, I kind of think that it might have been a mistake to do that now, looking forward today, because I never thought we would be having this conversation.
I'm glad you said that, because I love that people can express themselves. We live in
I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to use you as an excuse to not allow other trans people to change their birth certificates.
America. It doesn't matter what I believe, what my religion is. I love that people can live their best life. I would never, ever in my life protest or try to go against a person who wants to identify. The problem is when you begin to try to change language and you begin to try to change reality, and then therefore it changes on the children, and all of that becomes problematic. If a person says, okay, I acknowledge I'm born as a man.
Sweet Myths, thank you very much for gifting a sub. I really appreciate it.
No woman, but I want to identify as this. Cool. I respect that. And even if I didn't want to see it that way, and some people may be a little more ambiguous, I wouldn't never disrespect you. I'll call you by your name.
That's right.
Whatever name that you want to be associated.
I'll call you by your name, but I'm not going to use your pronouns, which is going to get real confusing for everyone around me, because they're going to be like, you're saying she, but like the guy you're talking about has like a fucking beard. What are you talking about?
I'll do that. And I think if everybody in the country can get on that same page, I think we'll see less division.
I've noticed in a lot of the trans individuals that I've met, the older generation who had it a lot harder in society to be accepted is a lot more willing to have the conversation.
We didn't have social media. I didn't have cell phones. I didn't have computers when I transitioned. This is how.
You know, maybe though the appropriate response to the ideas you're spitting here is shut the fuck up and get out of my fucking way and let me live my life. You know, maybe that is the proper response to the kind of bigotry that is being shown in this video. What's wrong with that guy's face? I don't know, but it bothers me every time he's focused on. He's just too smooth. He's like, he looks like bad CGI from Terminator 2. That's what, like, he looks like a half-formed human being from that movie. Yeah. Well, his brain is smooth too, but I'm just talking about like physically.
How you build bridges. I'm Buck. I'm 59 years old, and I'm a trans man.
Again, I'd really like it if Jubilee wouldn't introduce these people as if they're just like normal people. Buck Angel is like super famous and like has a pretty significant following and a pretty significant political bias here.
Because I'm an elder trans man now and there's a much newer generation, there's a definite space where I have a different way of being than the younger generation, and why I tend to call myself a transsexual man. And I believe in biology, I believe in binary, so...
He's a trans medicalist, and fuck him.
It really does not necessarily align with the new thought process that is happening with the newer generation.
So I love this question. With trans folks, biology does change. Our bone density does change. Our muscle structure does change. Our testosterone levels do change. So biologically, we do change. Anatomically, now that's where surgeries come into play.
Why was that guy committing friendly fire? Because Buck Angel is a trans medicalist. He's kind of aligned with like the likes of Blair White. I'm not familiar too much with his politics, but in terms of views on trans people, he is very much aligned with Blair White. You know, the kind of ideas like if you don't pass as a trans person, you're not, you don't deserve to be gendered correctly, etc. Yeah, the guy we were talking about looking weird is this guy who looks just smooth as hell in a bad way. Buck Angel is a porn star.
So when we're talking about biology and gender that can't be changed, our biology absolutely
Blair White is a trans woman.
Concretely changes.
Not the DNA.
But our biology.
But Blair White is a trans woman who makes political videos on YouTube. Really pretty. That's about it. She's a horrible conservative. And is willing to throw all other trans people under the bus so that she looks special and good.
Yeah, DNA is not going to change for anyone.
So you acknowledge there's a biological difference between males and females, because some people on the other side would say there's no difference. Like a female, like I could look like a girl, not having testosterone, but I'm still a male.
Some people are male, some people are female, chromosomally. But when we start to take testosterone, our bodies do biologically change.
But what about trans men who don't take testosterone?
Then their bodies don't biologically change.
That means then they're biologically still female, right?
Well, and gender in itself is something we get to choose. Okay,
That's right.
I mean, frankly, when we're talking about issues of sex, the only time someone else's biology is your business are if you're a doctor or that person's partner. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's the only time it's your business. Who gives a fuck if you're just walking down the street and you see someone who isn't on testosterone but identifies as a trans man? I'm sorry. Chat, are any of you familiar with bull dykes? Are any of you familiar with bull dykes? There are some cisgender women who aren't on testosterone who have extremely masculine characteristics. Like, trying to find a good example that isn't horribly offensive. Oh, here we go. Like, there are people who go around the world and they are very masculine in their presentation and appearance. And there have been cis women who present very masculinely, who attempt to use the bathroom, and who then become targets of anti-transgender violence. So do I care if this person has been on testosterone or not, and they identify as a trans man? No. I also don't care if they are just a cisgender butch lesbian. Like, just whatever. You call them he or she, they correct you, you apologize and move on with your life. Like, it's real easy. It's not that complicated.
That's well, right. in your life, you get to choose. Not you don't get to choose it for the world, but you get to choose.
I get to choose my gender because I've been on testosterone for 10 years. Okay, going on 11 years.
But there's some anatomy that will never change.
That's right.
Right? I mean, you still have ovaries. You still have, the female reproductive system. You said that you had a child.
Yes, I've given birth. I no longer have female reproductive organs.
Right, but you had that. You will never get male productive organs.
Now, when you think about it, the male and female productive organs are similar, and they're nearly the same. They're different. Right. They're different in size.
Even if
biologically,
and they're different in functionality too.
Not necessarily, because the testes.
Well, also, there is bottom surgery for trans men. There are trans men who get penises. That is a thing that happens. It's not quite as far along in its sophistication as like vaginoplasties, but yeah, there are surgeries that give trans men functional phalluses. And it's called phalloplasty. You know, you got vaginoplasty, you got phalloplasty. Yeah, there are trans men with full-on dicks. There are, and then there are trans women with full-on vaginas. Like, it's gotten to the point for trans women. I don't know how far along it is for trans men. But for trans women who get bottom surgery, their vaginas are indistinguishable from like a natural vagina, a cis woman's vagina. Yeah, phalloplasty is only one type of surgery for trans men. Yeah, there are a bunch of different ones. So yeah, this is a thing, like, which is why I find this part really weird. Like, but you'll never have male genitalia. But it's like, well, actually, yeah, you kind of can. You kind of can have that now, because we live in a world of wonderful modern medicine. It's pretty cool.
Are very much similar. One is an egg. One is a fertilizer.
But
and
we
that's
can
the
never.
difference.
But I never can produce sperm.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And they can never produce ova.
And you guys are saying that gender is like a social construct. Is that what you're saying too? That you could change it? But also, if you want to be technical about it, age is a social construct. Your ethnicity and race is a social construct. And I'm Hispanic. I can't say I'm Chinese because I like Chinese food. I could bleach my skin all I want. I could wear Chinese clothes.
No, race is not. How is ethnicity going to be a construct?
God, it always comes around to transracialism for these people. Transracialism is the last refuge of transphobes. I swear to Christ.
There's all social constructs.
So
all agree on it.
how exactly?
If you look up, is race a social construct? Ethnicity a social construct? Is time a social construct? Right. Everything's a social construct. If you
Yes, because we understand the world via social mechanisms that have been socially constructed for us. Yes. If you're not Rush. You know, like, the dick gets hard even when you're not attracted to what's going on, right? That penises get hard for a variety of reasons. Only one of which is because you saw an attractive woman. Like, for example, during sexual assaults, many men wind up having erections even though they are being violently violated, because that's just how the body reacts to various stimuli. So, like, you're just wrong. Your penis knowledge is very limited. Yeah, exactly, Ultra Speed. That is a better way of putting it. Penises get hard for so many reasons, a lot of which can be random and not wanted. Exactly. Now I'm kind of curious, though, because I'm falling down this rabbit hole. Has there ever been attempts to, like, transplant testes into trans men? Yo, what? Okay, this is from 2019, so this is pretty cool. Surgeons successfully performed the testicle transplant. The procedure could help trans men one day. A 36-year-old cis man born without testicles in Belgrade, Serbia, has just received a testicular transplant from his identical twin brother to help his body produce its own testosterone and sperm. Yo, there's a lot going on in that first sentence. Holy shit. Your brother was willing to give you a testicle? That is okay. There's a lot going on here. Yeah, a real bro. That is pretty cool, though. It's only the third such surgery ever to occur in the world. Doctors say it could eventually be applied to trans men using the removed testicles of trans women. That's interesting. Yo, that'd be so fucking cool. We're literally getting to the point where like trans women can just be like, yo, take my testicles, please. And trans men can be like, hell yeah. That's so cool. I love it. Several transgender men have contacted the doctor who performed the surgery to ask if it could help them develop testosterone without the need for constant hormone injections. The doctor said that the potential rejection of donor tissue remains the largest consideration for whether or not to attempt any organ transplants. He also says he has developed a surgical plan for transplanting a penis onto a body that is anatomically female, and that he hoped to begin performing that surgery within the next year or so, according to the New York Times. That is cool as shit. We're learning things today. Yeah, rejection is the issue, but like, if we can overcome that.
You want to think about it that way. But we have set truths and we can't change those truths. If you want to say you're a trans man, that means you're a biological female that thinks that you're a male.
I am a biological male. I'm an anatomically.
See, he's gonna have different version of it than,
right.
and I think it's really important that you understand
and
we're all gonna have
it's
different views.
anatomic, okay?
Yeah.
Because biologically, I have shifted, okay? Trans meaning going from one to the next.
Biologically and all these things, I know that there's importance for you guys, but meeting me or seeing me, you would never know. So why is it important?
Well, no, because just
I'm just
say
curious.
if I was a woman, just say if I was a woman and I wanted to date you, what are you going to tell me?
I would tell you that I'm trans. What do you
No,
mean?
I'm saying you can't tell me that you're a man.
I mean, I'm still a man.
No, but you
I'm a
got to tell
transgender
me.
man.
You got to tell me that you were born a woman. You have to.
I mean, I don't have to.
Well, because if I go down, if I see
Right.
Yo, this is the yo, but if I want to fuck you,
in your pants,
right,
I'm going to see something different, and that will be troubling to me if I had an expectation.
But again, this is like leading off the topic, but I mean, to answer your question, if you must know, I do tell the person that I'm talking to or interested that I'm transgender. I don't think that you need it to, you don't need a penis to be a man. And I know that you may disagree, which is fine, like I get it, but I don't want one.
Now, I have a question for all of you. Do your penises make you men?
Yes, biologically.
Is that what makes you?
Well, I said being a man's ingrained within every part of your body. So.
Is this going to be our based king? Is he going to take up the sword, the transgender sword to cut down our foes? Because I think I see where he's going with this. Is the penis what makes you a man? If you were in a horrible car accident and your penis got sheared off, would you no longer be a man? Yo, let's do it. Let's do it, King. Let's fucking go.
Right, but if you had to look at the difference between us and between you, now would that difference be the lack of a penis?
If we were naked.
Okay.
I mean,
if we're gonna minimize being a man to that particular anatomy,
we didn't minimize.
No. I'm asking the question. Okay. If we minimize it, because this is where we're going, is anatomy, right? Because that's where we've gotten.
Our basic biology.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we get there, so do your penises make you more men than us?
It's part of
it's
what
not
does.
making more or less. It's we're a biologically man. You're not a biological man.
It's not a spectrum, so it's not a question that we can answer, because you're saying on the spectrum, would this make us more of a man than you? But no, it's because we are a man and you guys aren't.
Well, we're different.
So we're not men.
We're
is
different.
exactly what you just said.
In my view, you guys are appropriating the gender and you are living as a man, but biologically you are not a man. So to me,
you gotta ask the question and then you gotta take the next step. Otherwise, we're gonna get stun locked on this.
it's not, you can't say, okay, well, does that make us more of a man? That's not even a question to ask, because you're not a biological man.
Dude, you're just lucky you weren't born like 500 years ago, okay? You'd be castrated and made a singer in Italy.
When it comes down to asking questions that make me start to change what the truth is and what the truth isn't, putting it on a spectrum when it's an objective truth, that's where I draw the line.
What's the biggest problem with what he said? It doesn't make you it doesn't make what you feel any different. The biological truth is the truth. And why can't that be the truth? And you also say, but I feel like on the inside
Hey, Metal
that
Kitty
I'm
Mom.
a man and I'm going to present that way.
The argument is that people try to invalidate who we are with that. I'm not saying that you guys are doing that, but a lot of society in the world does that. Well, biologically, you're female. What hurts trans people that people don't realize what they're doing is it's very harmful. You got to be aware of what you're saying and what you're putting out there.
Okay, but these guys don't give a fuck. They just said to your face that they don't think any of you are men.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, 100%. I would, and that's why I think we all agree. We would never try to offend you or anything like that. To be honest, if I saw anyone
We'd never try to offend you. We just wouldn't call you men.
in the streets, I don't care. It's not going to bother me that you want to.
Right.
I would know unless I pulled your pants down or something.
Right.
Why do you feel like you have to?
Yeah. You would never know unless you pulled their pants down, which is kind of indicating a gender being a social construct, because you're operating on assumptions that are informed by your socialization.
You know, facial hair. Could you
Right.
be a man without having facial hair?
I mean, yeah.
Because you feel like you're a man.
I'm in the early stages of testosterone. I haven't hit 1 year yet. But personally for me, you know, I crave, you know, having a full-on beard like these fine gentlemen and you guys all like I crave it, you know, like
Yeah, except for the one man on the other side who literally has no hair on his body.
But I do believe like not having like this little small peach fuzz I have going on, it does make me feel more dysphoric. It makes me like feel like, oh, this is how I presented before transitioning.
Women find short guys attractive. The idea that women don't find short guys attractive is wild and weird.
Feel like it's something
There is a bias against short men, and I acknowledge that. And, you know, here we stand all our kings, regardless of size.
that has gone wrong at birth. Like, you know, you're born and you say, well, genetics and evolution says
Right.
this. Why do I feel like this?
Yeah,
yet
I mean,
have
I think
this?
questioning it was something that I always wondered, because sometimes when people say like, oh, like it was a choice, which I hear a lot on the other side all the time, like it was a choice. I was legit born this way. Like I could remember from, I think 4 or 5 years old where like I didn't feel like a girl, you know what I mean? And I
Hey, men love Tom Cruise. He's literally like 5'2".
can't tell you why that happened. It was just my path in this life. And it's something that I honored. And, you know, it was really hard for me to continue living, especially when puberty hit. You know, like time of month comes in, obviously anatomy changes, like, and that was the biggest thing for me where I knew that like, okay, I can't do this. It's like you're not in your own home.
Children should be allowed to transition.
You know who gets laid nonstop? Warwick Davis. Okay? Warwick Davis gets laid nonstop. We stand short kings. He's literally 5'6". Danny DeVito fucks.
Well, I was gonna say I find it very interesting that you and I are the only ones that stepped up, especially since we're younger. And
You should allow children to feel what they feel, because I felt the way that I felt for as long as I can remember, and it's something that I cannot deny.
Yeah.
You know, although my mother is supportive, when I was young,
Then be a 5'6" somebody.
I wasn't allowed to wear boys' clothes because that wasn't right. Now I know we're talking about transitioning. It doesn't always have to be hormones. It's like,
Yeah, I said 3'6". Isn't Warwick Davis more like 4'6"? No, he's like 3'6". He tiny.
transitioning in society, so being able to dress more masculine. I did when I was younger, but as I got into middle school, kids change, people are mean, so you know, I dressed how I would in society, so I dressed like a girl, whatever, but I think that children should be allowed to
Peter
express
Dinklage is a
themselves
hot man,
and whatever
like,
way makes them
objectively.
feel comfortable.
kids are struggling to be who they are.
No, I said, Rush said, women don't like 5'6" nobodies, and I said, then be a 5'6" somebody.
And there's more rates of suicide for trans individuals because there's literally being laws put in place to prevent them from being who they are, and that's not right. That's not right.
can't wait for all these men to say that kids shouldn't be allowed to go through just one puberty. God.
Okay, so I work with children. This is where I have like the biggest problem with the trans stuff is with the children, because people, like I'm sure you guys would agree, you want to inject them with the hormones to stop their
No, you don't inject them with hormones to stop the puberty. You give them puberty blockers, a medication that's been around since the 1970s and has been used on cisgender kids for literally like 50 years now. Puberty blockers have been used on cisgender kids for 50 goddamn years with no ill effects. It just so happens that there's a second use case here that is applicable to transgender kids.
normal puberty. They haven't even developed their prefrontal cortex yet, and you want to stop their natural puberty from occurring to affirm their gender, and then later on they regret it. I think that's not a good.
You stop their natural puberty to literally give them more time with child psychologists to help them figure out if that's what they really want. That's the process. The process involves like 3 or 4 years of consultation with a child psychologist, and not just one, multiple child psychologists, as well as specialists who specialize in gender services and gender care in hospitals who are fucking doctors. So you have like 3 doctors figuring out and making sure that this is what the kid actually wants.
See, that's why this is a loaded question, because transition can mean many things for children. Now, I totally, as a transsexual person, disagree with giving children hormone blockers, medication, surgery, but what I do agree with is socially transitioning, which means why, because I did that, okay, and I did that in the 60s and 70s. My parents.
I mean, like, hey, social transition is good, but give them the hormone blockers and allow them to maybe have the chance of going through just 1 puberty instead of 2. So that they have better mental health and physical health outcomes. That's generally agreed upon as a way more healthy thing than forcing 2 puberties.
Parents dressed me like fuck, I was a boy, you know, I didn't have any problems because I just lived.
Why cis male? Because there are trans men. There are trans men, and then there are trans women. Trans men, cis men. 2 different kinds of men. Kind of like how there are white men and black men. You know, 2 different kinds of men. So, yeah.
We used to call it a tomboy, right? So that was totally, and I went through puberty and I did all the things. I do not believe children can make those choices, and I do not believe it's okay and ethical for a parent to make those choices for a child. But I do believe gender dysphoria exists in children. I had it, 100% it's there. But to give medication to a child is so unethical to me that you would act.
Okay. Yeah, giving medication to a child is unethical, except when that medication is being prescribed by a medical professional. Hence why there are medical professionals trying to establish that they need the medication. That's literally the process. If you want to be a man, then change into a man and call yourself a man. Well, yeah, but the term is trans man. You know, like most black men would just call themselves a man, right? But when we need to distinguish a particular type of man, for example, we would use a cisgender man, or a black man, or a trans man, or a white man, or an Asian man. These are all descriptors of what kind of man they are, so that we can know who is being talked about. Enough with terms. Fuck terms. That's literally how language works. You're just getting angry that we're talking about adjectives. This fucking guy. No cis/trans, just men. You know what? I agree. We should reach the post-gender society. Where the distinction between cisgender men and trans men no longer exists. I agree. Let us work towards this amazing future where trans men and cis men no longer need be distinguished due to the bigotry of our current society. Based Rush, thank you for taking us another step closer towards the glorious gender abolition future. Within this ideology, we are all bros. What is this, Schoolhouse Rock? We are all humans. Enough with cis men and trans men. True. Enough with the concept of men altogether. Instead, we will all be as we choose to be. And no one will judge us the lesser for it. Amazing. Incredible. I love it.
Actually, you're exactly what you said. You're stunting brain growth. You're stunting all of these things. They don't have enough research on it. So I'm in agreement with transitioning medically for children is not okay for me, but I do believe in a social space.
When you say a social transition, it's interesting to me because we can't control what happens in a social situation.
That's right. That's right.
So to me, and we talk about suicide rates among young trans people, this whole ideology is telling people to derive their value off of what somebody else is saying about them or what somebody else affirms to them. So we say that, you know, society.
Wait, but you do derive a lot of your worth in a society from what other people are saying about you. That's literally part of how society functions.
Society is the problem, and we're not allowing people to be who they are, and that's why they're committing suicide. But maybe it has to do with the messaging that we're sending to these kids, that you derive your value from if somebody uses your correct
It's true,
pronoun.
Rush.
You derive your value.
It's true. We should abolish all language. No more words. Only actions. Only deeds. Only interpretive dance. I agree. Return to monkey. Return to graceful monkey dances.
If this person accepts you for wearing a
only
dress,
bunga.
be who you are, but tell them to be empowered about it and not get that empowerment from somebody else.
I feel like that's really kind of inconsiderate to say that
Can I
someone would
grunt?
take their life because what someone
Only
else
in private.
says. To somebody that is important. To somebody, I know, have friends who their family does not use the correct pronouns and they've transitioned and they live in the same household. This person struggles with depression and anxiety. Could you imagine living in an environment like that where you're no longer validated? That's coming from your own parents.
But if you base your validation off of other people, this is a hard truth, but if you're...
Okay, imagine you live in a house where everyone, just every time you see them, they call you a piece of shit. Sorry, you know, actually I don't have to make up an example. Imagine you live in an abusive household. It doesn't have to be that your dad beats you, but, you know, there's this thing called verbal abuse, you know, where your parents belittle you, make fun of you, don't validate you, and criticize you for liking the things you like. You know, it's emotional abuse. It's verbal, emotional, mental abuse. The idea that like this shouldn't have an effect on someone is literally insane. The idea that like, oh, mental abuse should just don't be affected by it. You know, this is like the equivalent of like seeing an action movie and being like, huh, I would have simply caught the bullet in my teeth and spat it out rather than dying like a bitch. Like, it's just like, sorry, the world doesn't work that way. In the real world, the bullet enters the front of your skull and exits the back, and you don't really get a choice in the matter. In the same way, like, you don't get to choose whether or not us, like, responding as a social creature to social abuse has a negative mental and physical toll on you. You don't get to choose. This is just the effect of abuse.
Full
No, you
validation as
definitely
an
have to do it.
individual is
Listen, I
based on
could give
people.
a shit what everyone thinks about me. I do what I want. But for everyone, that's not the case because everybody has different personalities.
Right, but that doesn't make it any. That doesn't mean that
But it's
we
still,
should
but
be
what you're not
telling people to get
acknowledging, what you're not
validation from
acknowledging though
others.
is that in that environment it is not supported.
I'm acknowledging that. I'm
Okay.
just saying that we're saying that for some reason.
I think the necessary framing for the trans men on this panel is to frame it as abuse. Not recognizing your child's gender, refusing to give them that validation is child abuse. We have studies on this. We know that parents who refuse to acknowledge their transgender kids make it 14 times more likely that their kid is going to attempt suicide. That is the cold hard reality. And if making your kid 14 times more likely to attempt suicide, by the way, in any given year, means isn't child abuse, I don't know what is. I don't know what you would call it. Other like purposely making your kid want to die? Wait, how is that anything other than abuse? Also, the Rush. I'm sorry that reality is more complicated than you would like it to be. You don't understand any of this shit? Well, I've been trying to explain it. You know, you could go back over this VOD. Maybe you'll learn something.
They should look for that validation from somebody
When
else
you
rather
love
than
somebody
find it
and
within.
you have a family, you want them to
But
validate
you're
you.
focusing not on the individual, you're focusing on the people outside of that
Yeah, but
individual.
the individual
I'm focusing on empowering that individual.
But part of being
You're-
a person is needing to be validated. You don't need to be validated ever in your life from your family or your friends.
I get my
Never.
validation from within, and then the
Right, but if we're talking about children, okay, if we're talking,
child.
okay, I was an 8-year-old when I found out that I wasn't biologically male, right? I was 8 when I found out that I wasn't the same as my brothers, okay? And so going through that process, I attempted suicide 4 times because my mother was like, well, you are a girl. When you're 8 and you're 12 and you don't have anyone else that is in your space, when you don't have anyone else that lives in the same house as you to tell you you're okay, where are you supposed to go? How are you supposed to garner your own self-validation if the people that are raising you don't validate who you are?
As a father, you know, my duty is to raise my children the way I believe is right.
No, your duty is not to indoctrinate your kids. Your duty is to raise healthy kids. If your method of raising your kids the way you believe it should be done leads to your kids wanting to kill themselves, you're a shitty father.
And if my child somehow struggles with this, which is fine, we'll have that conversation. But I'm going to let it
Which is fine. We'll have that conversation.
play out the way I believe it should be played out. And at 18 years old, you can do whatever you want to do.
That kid is going to hate you for the rest of their life. That kid, if that kid makes it to 18 years old, they will hate you for the rest of their life.
If you don't want to wear dresses, that's fine. I mean, just wearing if you want to dress like a boy, don't make you want to be a boy. Don't mean you have to be a boy. My mom was a tomboy, and my mom had me and my brother, and she's a woman, you know, and she lives like that. But you know, you may want to dress a little different. Maybe a boy want to do cheerleading or something like that.
Right.
But that don't mean you need to transition to something else. So I want that to play out until my child.
That
is old enough to
18-year-old
make that
would be
decision
right
on
to
their
hate
own.
him.
Also, you have to teach your children to have balance, because if you just want mommy and daddy to acquiesce to everything you want, that's
no.
not reality. You have to understand that mom and dad may not see me this way. They love me. I see myself this way, and I disagree with how they speak to me or how but I love them as well.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The love that you are showing your kid in this example is the kind of love that makes them more likely to die. There are parents who think that they love their kids who will beat their kids because they love their kids so much, but they saw them kissing a boy at school, or something like that. They saw them holding hands a little bit too long with another girl at school. Like, it's really not that hard to understand that I love my kids is not like a thing that prevents you from harming your kids. Yeah, Melissa Biss says, my mom said she loved me and would hit me and scream at me over nothing and called me a piece of shit and a bastard a lot. Like, sure didn't feel like love. Exactly. Love can be abusive. Exactly. Love can be harmful to the object or person you love. Sometimes we destroy the things and people we love.
I love, like my son, if he said it, he was, and I'm a Christian and I don't believe in homosexuality. I don't.
Okay, wait, what does that mean? You don't believe in homosexuality? Do you not believe gay people exist? Or do you not believe it's good? Okay, but let's hear him out. In this hypothetical he's about to weave for us, his son is gay. But he doesn't believe in it. Let's hear how Officer Tatum would handle his gay son.
I respect anybody that feel that way. I never, protest you at all. If my son came to me, it would be a struggle for me to want to go to his wedding. I'm just going to be honest. But I think that my son should understand this is the way my dad feel. I love him. This is the way I feel, and we have mutual love. And that don't mean I hate you. That just mean we disagree.
Yeah, it don't mean I hate you. It just means that your significant other will never be allowed into my home. I'll never want to be a part of your combined life if you do wind up getting married. It just like, yeah, I'll just never want to see you outside of very limited contexts ever again. And we won't be able to talk about anything because if something you will want to talk about is going on with your partner, well, it's disgusting to me. Thank God that's not my dad. I mean, it's kind of my dad. Yeah. Honestly, this is an overwhelming number of queer people's dads. I don't hate you, but I disagree with your life choices and who you are, but I still love you. Yeah, that's another part. Like, I don't hate you. I love you. But I disagree with who you are at a fundamental level. Fuck knows what my father would think of me being trans. I cut that shit out of my life at 14. Yeah. This is what Catholics do? Sure. What is the difference? The difference is telling themselves that they love their kids is how they get to sleep at night. It's how they justify, well, I love you, but I'm going to act in all of the ways that tells you, that tell you that I don't love you. My mom doesn't even try to use my true name. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if I had changed my my name when I transitioned, I'm pretty sure my dad would never call me that name. Women think men are pigs. Women don't think that, but a lot of men do act like pigs. This is true. It's really hard. It's really, really hard. Yeah, we just disagree, and I'm gonna cut you out of my life. One of the things I told my dad when I came out to him, he literally looked at me and told me that there would always be a gulf between us now. And I told him that I will always have a bridge built halfway to meet him in the middle, and he just looked at me and he shook his head, and then he left the room. The love that some parents have for their kids is not enough to get them to accept their kids. I'm sorry, Salmon Moose. I'm pretty close to crying at the moment. Would he feel that way about any daughter? No. My dad has never acknowledged me as a woman, and he likely never will. You're kinder than I would be. I hold on to some small degree of hope that maybe my dad will change. Because my therapist said that it was the worst experience they'd ever seen with a parent in a coming out situation. And the thing I hold on to is that my therapist also said that the thing that makes it different, and the thing I hold on to, is just that, you know, this was like even though it was the worst experience she'd ever seen, the worst experience they'd ever seen, they pointed out that my dad came. You know, he came to the coming out meeting, and that's something that, you know, only one out of maybe 10,000 people who, you know, feel the way he does would have done. And so maybe he'll come around at some point. Maybe. Yeah. My dad refused to see my therapist. Yeah. And that's the vast majority of how things would go. So I don't know. I'm hoping my dad comes around. We'll see. It's hard to cut your dad out of your life, you know? Maybe he didn't know it was a coming out meeting. I mean, probably not. He never had an inkling that I was trans. So anyway, let's finish this video.
I wish that same sentiment would be, and I think it's the same on this panel. Like, there's no hate in any of this. Right. I love every single person on this side.
Yeah. Also, bigotry doesn't need hatred. Bigotry doesn't need active malice. You know, there is the mundane, bored, slow normalness of bigotry. Doesn't need to be a writhing hatred for it to be bigoted.
And we may think of things differently, but we love each other. It can't be one-sided.
I am lucky, I'm 41, and I'm a trans man. One of my greatest fears as a trans man is my life being taken from me because I'm a trans man.
Rush, I need to point one thing out to you, okay? I'm gonna read your comment out to you, and I hope that you can understand the flaw in your logic here, okay? Just to let you guys in the chat know, I don't dislike trans/gay people. I just don't understand because I'm not gay or trans. Please understand where I'm coming from. How can we understand where you're coming from when we are gay or trans? In your world, you can never understand gay and trans people because you aren't gay or trans, which would then mean because we are gay and trans, we would never be able to understand you. Right? However, most of us are able to understand you because we're able to understand the basic premises of these ideas. So I'm just asking a little bit more from you to make some kind of use of your empathy or sympathy to be able to project yourself into a hypothetical situation where you feel the same way about a man that you see that you do about a woman that you might see. Or use the ability of this hypothetical scenario machine that we've built together to imagine what it might be like if you, as you were now, were born into a body that did not align with how you felt on the inside, and how that might be really difficult. Using this ability to project yourself into hypotheticals. This is what we call imagination, and using the ability of empathizing and understanding different people who are different from you. That's the thing you need to be able to do. I have literally been talking about a lot of different topics that are integral to understanding the trans experience and core to understanding the gay experience as well. So again, you could learn a lot if you watch back this VOD, or at least this section of the VOD. And I hope you do. I genuinely hope you do. Yeah, hypothetical sounds like idealism.
Transitioning in a black neighborhood with gang members as neighbors, they weren't having that. So the more that my body started to look a lot like theirs, I was challenged on a regular basis. I was beaten up because someone recognized me from prior to my transition and approached me and confronted me and called me a liar and told me I was a bitch. And
How did you get into transgenderism? I love when ladies are into that kind of thing. I genuinely don't know what you mean.
out of safety was like, I don't know what you're talking about, and they cold cocked me, and I lost a front tooth.
I grew up with a positive father figure.
This is good.
Yeah, Rush, there are a lot of non-trans people in chat right now. There are literally 91 other people in chat. Not all of them are trans. In fact, I'd hazard a guess that most of them aren't trans. And they are not having the same issues you are. How did I get trans? Oh, God.
I think for me it's surprising.
That's enough, yeah.
Because I would believe that a woman who, or a person who's born as a woman who now identifies as a man,
I'm trans, but also
have
gay.
A positive role model
Cool.
as a man, and therefore they felt somewhat insecure as a woman, which makes them, feel a certain way and want to be a certain different.
Mad
person.
Latin, thank you for
Maybe
the
they wanna be
150
the man that the
biddies.
father never was, or whatever the case may be. And so it was very interesting. I mean, being honest, it was interesting to see pretty much a majority of.
Yeah. Tell me the tale of how you became straight. Tell me how you decided to be a man.
You guys come forward.
A
That's so
cisgender
great.
man.
I think that's really important that you say that, because I do think a lot of people probably feel that way about guys like me, right? That our fathers we didn't have the right upbringing or what. My father was amazing. I grew up really like a little boy. I always felt like a little boy. My parents actually raised me, and I'm 59 years old. So that was in the 60s and the 70s when we didn't even talk
Catalina
about this kind of
Gearbox,
stuff.
thank you
But
for the
my
100
parents
biddies.
actually felt it from me. So I think that that's a misconception that people think about people like us.
Any good father pushes their child to feel self-love and to feel like they can be who they want, do what they want, and have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Like our founding fathers. And so it's
How did the straights recruit
having
you?
a missing dad is a pandemic in its own, and it's one that obviously I'm sure Brandon can attest to. It's so critical to have a father in the house, because kids get lost when they don't have one, and having a father that's loving and strong and someone you can rely on is the reason why we're all comfortable with who we are.
I had several different father figures like in my life. So it wasn't, I had a dad, but then I had my grandfather and I had my uncle. It takes a village to raise a child, right? But all of those different perspectives raised me as a well-rounded human. Like, if we take the masculinity out of it, just as a human, I got to see different perspectives. And so now as a father that has given birth to a child, and that child being a male, right, I'm able to raise him with those same ideals that I'm able to identify because of the.
Yeah, Big Orange Shoe. I don't know. Why is Jubilee's middle ground filled with mostly conservative men? Who knows?
Father figures that I had.
I didn't have my father growing up. He was not present in my life at all. So it showed me that some men can step up, like my grandfather and my stepfather, who have taken me in and showed me how to take care of myself, how to be, strong and dependable. And all I've been able to do is give more love to all people that I interact with.
Right.
So it was really important for me to have those figures.
I think this is a really important thing to show people
the other
that are
black
watching
man
this,
on the
'cause
panel.
a lot of times I feel like we can blame any issues in society or anything that arises on the generation that came before us. So any issues that arise in our society, it's like there's not always a reason why it's happening. We just need to address the issue and solve it.
I grew up with all women. My parents are divorced, and I lived with my mom. I had my aunts, so I was raised by women.
He's so
but,
smooth. It's distracting.
My dad was there sometimes, and then my stepdad took me in as his own, so I had my stepdad as a father figure.
I grew up with all women as well. My mom used to tell me I have to be your mom and your dad. So there would be times where I got both. Like she was super sweet with me or really strict on me, and she taught me a lot as well. Like growing up with women, it taught me a lot of vulnerability.
When you were talking to you, I was like, I relate to you very well. But yeah.
I'm Jacob. I'm 27 years old, and I'm a trans man. So the relation with my dad and how unsupportive he is has been a challenge for me, but it's something that I've learned to grow past. And I encourage everyone that even if you don't have a parent who is supportive, to still be authentically yourself, because your life is meant to be lived for you. And I think that choosing my happiness above all else has made my life that much better, and I wouldn't change anything. Even though he wasn't supportive, I still wouldn't have him here.
Listening to all your guys' points, I would definitely say, yeah, I did have a father figure. He was in the Marines, and he has this very toxic masculinity mindset. A lot of anger built up that I can definitely tell he suppressed, in the Marines, because that's what he was taught to do. That's what the Marines are about. He always carried that with him, and I think that's what he tried to instill in me and my siblings at a very young age, which made it hard for me to be vulnerable with myself. And I just saw a lot of anger issues that were very violent sometimes. And since coming out as trans, I feel like he's been more willing to understand me more and trying to figure out who I am as a person. And because of that, I feel like our relationship has definitely got a lot stronger since then.
I can't imagine how difficult it is to come home and then try to be vulnerable after suppressing so much pain and hurt for years. So it's good to hear that, he's learning and kind of evolving and opening up. That's something where, you guys were talking about vulnerability, right? And it's like, there's times when it's good to be hard.
I don't show a
Oh no! Phrasing! Oh, fuck, man.
as much as I'd like.
I definitely have
He's
since,
not wrong, though.
and noticed since transitioning that being on testosterone has made me cry less, which is very interesting because I believe that before I transitioned and started taking testosterone, I feel like not being able to cry as much, it makes me feel I'm like, damn, I wish I could cry right now, but it's not gonna happen. Hi, I'm Gibby and I'm a trans man. Before transitioning, I guess only presented as lesbian, but since transitioning, I've been able to be more comfortable with my sexuality. I've definitely seen on dating apps and stuff, a lot of conservative men fetishizing trans individuals, and it's interesting because...
Oh yeah, he is 100% right. conservative men love trans folks.
A lot of the time they say that they don't identify as gay or, within the community, and yet they're fetishizing my community.
So I don't know about you guys, but I always speak my mind. If I feel a certain way, I'll tell somebody, and that probably cost me a lot of relationships, but that's just how I am. So.
Damn, bold of you to come on to a multi-million viewed channel and just self-report like that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, I know we talked about vulnerability, a long time ago. I don't think there's anything wrong with being vulnerable. I think, like we said, there's times in...
There isn't anything wrong with being vulnerable. It's interesting. It's really interesting to me that this guy is trying to say, yeah, it really makes me think there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. But no one on the panel is saying there's something wrong with being vulnerable. Which makes me think that you're just saying that because you think being vulnerable is somehow antithetical to masculinity. Which is an interesting example of toxic masculinity right there.
Places for it, knowing when it's okay to be vulnerable and being self-aware of that, and then being strong when
vulnerability
you need to,
is strength.
Being,
true.
Sad, when it's appropriate. But I certainly am not as vulnerable or not as emotional as probably I should, because it's not something that I always did growing up. But I don't feel like I have any real issues like suppressing. I just feel like I kind of get it out in other ways.
Yeah, that's great. You look at.
Yeah. That's kind of the problem, though, isn't it? Getting out your emotions in other ways is how you make your emotions other people's problems. Like, you can get out your emotions in healthy ways. You can also get your emotions out in really unhealthy ways. So why not just be vulnerable and let your emotions out instead of bottling them up all the time? Yeah, maybe choose the healthier path here.
Look at it like that, because I believe for me, like my personal experiences, like because I was one, to transition at a very young age, and my dad being in the military, being a veteran, he would see me being vulnerable at times, and he'd be like, "Well, don't you want to be a man?" And that would make me feel like, "Oh, am I not supposed to be vulnerable anymore?" Now that I'm gonna transition. And it was just like very hard for me because, like I said earlier, it was hard for me to have that father figure at that time of my life.
My process of,
I mean, that's toxic, but like even the men on this panel are doing the same thing,
Digesting emotions is by myself, and I use that time to self-reflect. So if I'm feeling angry or if I'm, feeling really passionate about something or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look, we understand you're using the time to dissect your emotions by yourself in your goop tank that keeps you frictionless, okay?
Whatever the emotion is, sometimes I pull back and I don't show that emotion because I'm reflecting on it and trying to understand why it's there.
He needs
so I think a
time
lot
in
of
his
times people
pod
can
chat.
think men aren't showing enough emotion, but in reality, they're just self-assessing why that emotion is there in order to see what it's trying to teach us.
Right.
I mean, it depends on the extent of your sharing, Danny boy. Like sometimes sharing is really good. It helps other people connect with you and bond with you. And sometimes, like it's good to ask before you share with somebody, because maybe that other person isn't in a place right now where they can, help you shoulder that burden,
I think when I was female, I was much more angry. I was just reactive, angry, like, grr. And then as I became a man, I cry more now as a man than I ever did as a woman. And I think it's because I'm at peace with myself. And so before I was just so angry about being a woman and everyone calling me she and seeing a girl, and I'd just be, as a fashion model. So that really just took it to a whole other level. And then once I became a man, it was like, whoa, I can actually relax. And I think I do the same thing. I self-reflect on myself. I want to be this type of man that is more vulnerable and that is more accessing my own emotions.
Thank you, everyone.
Right on. Thank you.
That was cool. That was cool.
Thank you.
Can I take a picture with you after? Can I take a picture with you after?
Oh my god. Oh my that I can't believe we actually got through it.